And hello, everyone. And once again, we're back to When the Legends Die, as we're slowly reaching the end of the novel. We left off in chapter 30, where Tom has finally fought back to Red, and he is going to fight clean. He's going to ride the horses clean. No longer is he going to be doing it to throw bets or to set up bets for Red, and that totally breaks Red. Red no longer has a connection with Tom. He no longer has a connection with how he's dealing with it. The gambling was his life. Setting up these hoaxes was everything to him. So Tom's got home, resting up, getting himself ready for the next round of professional writing. But he's going to go to the big matches. He's no longer going to hit the small stuff. And so that's where we're left off, going into chapter 31 on page 128. July passed and August, simmering hot. September came and Red wanted to go somewhere and do something. Just a couple of shows, he urged Tom. Keep you sharp for next spring, but Tom said no. Red became surly and then silent. He finally saddled a horse and rode away. He was gone a week, came back with a hangover, was mean as a rabid coyote. Tom and Mayo ignored him and harvested the beans and the chilies, and September passed. October came and the first frost. Tom brought in the horses and spent a week working with them at the corral. Red, Mayo said, was still malo, meaning either sick or mean or both. But when he came out of the corral and growled, "Damn shame you doing this when you could be writing for money," and both of us having fun, Tom paid no attention to Red. When he felt that he was doing something wrong, he asked Mayo. Mayo said, "You work too hard. Save your arm." And when Tom asked what he meant, Mayo pointed out that he tended to power the rhythm horses. It was a shrewd observation. He powered the duckers and dodgers that kept changing rhythm, but the pattern buckers didn't need all that pressure on the rein. He rode with them, not against them. He rode the rough string until he had satisfied himself. Then the last week in October, Red rode off again. At dusk a week later, a stranger came down to the cabin. A little dark man on a scrawny mouse-colored horse. Tom went out to see what he wanted, but the man spoke little English. Tom called Mayo. They talked in Spanish, and Tom heard Red's name several times. Finally, Tom asked, "What's the matter with Red? Trouble?" "Yes, he is sick," this man says. "Did he get shot or carved up?" Mayo shook his head. "Sick." He patted his belly. "Very sick." "Where is he?" "Aztec." "In the hotel there." Tom went back into the cabin, got his hat and coat, and when he came out, Mayo and the stranger were at the barn, selling a horse for him. "No, Mayo," Tom said. "I'll take the car. It's quicker." "Oh, I forgot," Mayo said. They said, "Wait," and hurried to the cabin. Tom started the car's motor, and Mayo came out and handed him a roll of bills. "Get the doctor," he said. It was dusk, and the road was only a trail, but Tom knew every turn and every gully. He made the 30 miles to Aztec in less than an hour, parked in front of the hotel, and went to the desk. A little bald man was there. "Well, where's Red Dillon?" Tom asked. The man looked up, frowning. "You come to get him out of here?" "Well, where is he?" Tom demanded. The man's white eyebrows jumped. He jerked his head towards the stairway, then came around the counter. "I don't like them to die in my beds. It's bad for business. You going to pay his bill?" "I'll pay what he owes." They went upstairs along the hallway, and the man jerked a thumb towards the door. They turned and hurried off. The room was dark, but by the faint glow from one window, Tom saw a bed and someone in it. He moved towards it and stumbled over a chair. "Who's there?" It was Red's voice, hoarse and rasping. "Me, Tom. Where's the lamp?" "Oh, in the dresser over there." Tom found the lamp and lighted it. In the glow saw the chipped iron bed, the grayish sheet, the worn brown blanket, the streaked yellow wallpaper, and Red, his face gaunt and dark with the weak stubble, his eyes deep sunken, red-rimmed. His hands lay listless. "What happened to you?" "I'm a sick man, Tom." "Doc Wilson," he gasped, caught a shallow breath. "Take me home. Don't let me die in this rat hole." Tom took one of Red's hands. The fingers gripped his with desperate strength, and they felt hot. "How long have you been sick?" "I lost track." Red tried to sit up and sat back on the dirty pillow. "Help me put on my pants and take me home." "Pretty soon, after I see the doctor." Red's eyes lighted in anger. He pushed Tom's hand away, "Just like the rest of them." He turned for a jeering snarl, imagined only a whine. "God damn, all of you." They reached for Tom's hand again, and his fingers worked convulsively. I didn't mean that, Tom. I didn't mean it. He pushed Tom's hand away again and growled, Go on, get the hell out. I don't need you or anybody else. He lay wheezing for a moment, frowning in pain. They whispered, But come back, Tom. Come back and take me home. Tom went downstairs. The man at the desk said Doc Wilson lived 2 blocks down the White House. Tom found the house and went to the door marked office without knocking. A thin, dark man with a florid face and his shirt sleeves sat in his sleep sheets at a roll-top desk littered with pill bottles, rolls of bandages and adhesive tape, bottles of dark medicine. He was smoking a handmade cigarette and flakes of tobacco polka-dotted his shirt front. He looked up scowling. Who are you? What do you want? His voice was a tired growl. I'm Tom Black. I want to find out how sick Red Dillon is. The doctor took a deep puff off the cigarette, slowly let out the smoke, then dropped the butt into a cracked soup bowl already overflowing. He stamped out the coal with his thumb and wiped it on his blue serge pants. Dillon, he said, has a bad heart, his kidneys are riddled, his liver is shot to hell, and he's got a double hernia. That answer your question? Is he going to die? Yes. How soon? The doctor shrugged. I saw him 3 hours ago. I figured he'd be dead by dark. He's still alive, I take it? Yes. I'm going to take him home. You'll have a corpse before you get halfway there. But Tom had turned towards the door. Wait a minute, son, the doctor said. Tom paused, and Dr. Wilson got up, wearily shouldered in his coat and put on his hat. I'll go with you. Have another look. He picked up a black bag and tucked in his dangling stethoscope and snapped it shut. They went back to the hotel, ignored the man at the desk, and went up to Red's room. Only Red's eyes moved as they came in. He watched them for a minute, his eyes vague, then rasped, Where's Mayo? Tell the little chili eater to make a fresh pot of coffee. Got a hell of a hangover. He lifted one hand and let it fall limply, and he licked his lips. Tom glanced at the doctor, who took the stethoscope from his bag, thrust the ends into his ears, and held the diaphragm to Red's chest. Leave me alone, Red growled, gasping. He lifted a hand, tried to push the stethoscope away. The doctor stepped back, slowly shaking his head. Tom took Red's hand, clutching desperately. Then Red's eyes seemed to clear. Take me home, Tom, he ordered. He tried to sit up. Tom put an arm around him, supporting him, and Red stared at him and whispered, Better luck next time. He swallowed hard, his eyes closed, then opened again with a great effort. His eyes moved, whispering again, and Tom leaned close. Game's over, Red said. Then Tom couldn't catch the words until Red gasped, Dirty deal. Then the breath seemed to ease out of him. Tom led him back gently onto the pillow. He glanced at the doctor, who held a stethoscope to Red's chest in a moment, waited, listened again. That's it, he said. He's gone. And he drew the sheet up over the lifeless face. They went downstairs. The man at the desk looked up, questioning. He's dead, the doctor said. God damn it, the man cried. Another bed ruined, and... Shut your foul mouth, the doctor snapped. Isn't there any decency in you? Oh, where's the room key, the man asked sullenly. In my pocket. If anybody goes to that room before the undertaker comes, you'll answer to me. He turned to the door. Come on, he said to Tom, and they went out into the street. Tom hesitated. I'd better go back and pay for the room. Dr. Wilson put a hand on his arm. Let that damn fool wait. I'm the coroner, and I'm running things now. Where's your horse? I drove in. Tom nodded towards his car. Doctor got in, and they drove back to his house. Come on in, he ordered. They went into the doctor's office, and he got a bottle and 2 glasses from a cabinet and poured 2 drinks. He handed one to Tom and said, You could use this, and lifted his glass and said, A los muertos, as they say. He took a gulp, then glanced at Tom. But you're not Mexican, are you? No. Well, anyway, to the dead. Just like the rest of us, he didn't want to die, and just like the rest of us, he was mortal. He sat down at his desk and deliberately rolled a cigarette, brushed a spilled tobacco from his shirt front, and struck a match. He smoked for a moment, then said, Weren't you the kid Dillon used to take the gambling crowd to a cleaning at the roadies a few years back? Yes. Well, what do you do now? I'm a bronc rider. You any good? I'm a good rider. The doctor nodded, then sighed and took another gulp from his glass. At your age, we're all good, or we think we are. Then life catches up with us no matter who we are. He sat silent for a long moment and said, I suppose Dillon didn't leave a dime. I guess not. Well, just that hideout of his on the river, he didn't even own that. Or didn't you know? Just a squatter. Do you have any livestock out there? A few bad horses, some buckers, that's all. Then Tom realized what the doctor was saying. I'll pay to bury him, he said. The doctor looked at him surprised, but all he said was, I guess he deserves a coffin and a prayer. He was a human being, no matter what else. Want me to notify the undertaker? Yes. Well, what are you going to do now? I'm going to go home and tell Mayo. I mean, from here on, get a job as a cowhand or a wrangler? Well, I'm going to go down to Odessa the first year to ride. Rodeo? Tom nodded. The doctor glanced at him and said, Time is the rider that breaks youth. He slowly shook his head. A man named George Herbert said that almost 300 years ago, and it's still true. Many of us are a long time learning it. He sat silent, considering as though wanting to say more. Then he said again softly, a long time learning. He sat staring at the glass in his hand. Tom sat down his glass, half finished, and got to his feet. The doctor looked up, and Tom felt that he was a lonely man, reluctant to see him go. But he got up and went to the door with Tom and out onto the porch. He said, I'll get the undertaker. Tom got in his car and started the motor. The doctor was still there on the porch, his head tilted back a little, staring up at the stars. He was still there as Tom drove away. Tom drove home wondering whether Red would care whether he was buried in the graveyard out in the flats or wrapped in a blanket and left in a cave somewhere in the bluffs along the river. Probably the graveyard was best, with a coffin and a prayer, as the doctor said. Maybe Red would be at peace there. He went home and found the stranger, the man who had brought the message, still there, asleep in Red's bunk. He didn't rouse, but Mayo did when Tom went in. Tom told Mayo that Red was dead. Mayo sat up and crossed himself. So, he said. He asked no questions. He sat there in his bunk for several minutes, then lay down again, turned his face to the wall, and went back to sleep. 2 days later, they buried Red in the dusty little graveyard, just as Tom and Mayo and the undertaker and his helper and the preacher. The preacher, a tired little pinch-faced man in a shabby black suit, said the service by rote and read a short, impersonal prayer. Mayo crossed himself and muttered something in Spanish, and Tom whispered part of an old chant in words he had almost forgotten. Then the undertaker's helper began shoveling the dirt into the grave, the clods thumping hollowly in the black coffin. Tom gave the preacher $5 and would have given him a ride back to town if he had as much as said thank you. He didn't, so Tom left him to walk and go out with the undertaker. He and Mayo drove back into town, paid the doctor, then built the hotel. The undertaker had already been paid before the funeral, so that closed matters, and they headed for home. Mayo was sat silent for a long time. It costs money to die, he said. Tom nodded. Most of the money had come from the roll of bills Mayo had given him the night they got the word Red was sick. Red's own money, in a way, money that Mayo had taken from Red's pockets. And he thought of Red's words, I never could save a dime. Somebody always took it off of me. Well, some of Red's money went to give him a decent burial. A little later, Mayo said, Now it is in my place. Yes, Tom said. It's your place now, Mayo. Mayo gave him a quick glance as though surprised at having no argument about it. When my time comes, he said, then it is your place. Oh, don't worry about that, Mayo. I won't be here long. You going away? I'm going to Odessa in a few more weeks. Odessa. The name seemed to mean nothing to Mayo. Odessa, Texas. That's where the next big rodeo starts this year. So you make the big rumble. I'm going to make the big rumble, yes. Do you want to come along? Mayo shook his head. I rode my horses. I'm an old man. It didn't matter to Tom whether Mayo went along or not. Nobody else can live your life for you. You have to ride your own furies. He said more or less to Mayo, or more to himself than to Mayo. I've got a lot of riding to do. What? Mayo asked. I've got a lot of horses to ride, Tom said. All right, then moving on to chapter 32, then we're done for today. Odessa was just a small southwestern Texas town, but because its rodeo opened the season, it drew big crowds and long rows of contestants. Veteran riders and ropers went to Odessa to test their skills and reflexes and weigh them against the inevitability of time. Newcomers went there to see if youth and hunger for glory could outweigh experience in the arena. Many newcomers were weeded out at Odessa. Some persisted a few more weeks as the circuit moved along the southwest and crept slowly northward with spring. A few of the fortunate, skillful few stayed and rode to glory. Tom Black was one of the newcomers, and at first he was lost in the details of the routine. But he found a hotel room, paid his entry fee, studied his draws, and had time to appraise the horses and listen to the talk. He had heard most of the talk before, but the horses were new. Trained buckers, big, mean, and natural outlaws whose violence was fostered and encouraged. There we go. Lost my place here. The veteran writers, discussed them and swapped stories about them. Tom listened and looked and drew his own conclusions, knowing that all talk ends when you're astraddle a bronc and the chute gates open. He had ridden enough horses, heard enough crowds, been in enough arenas, they thought he wouldn't be tense or nervous when his turn came. But his hands were sweating and his legs were quivering as he sat in the saddle, awaiting a signal for the first go-round ride. The signal came, the bucking strap was jerked tight, the gate swung open, the horse lunged twice, ducked, and the rein slipped, and Tom was almost thrown. Fortunately, the horse was a rhythm bucker. Tom recovered and finished the ride clean, but as he walked back to the chutes, he knew it was a mediocre ride. He hadn't been thrown, that was all he could say for himself, but his first ride was over, his first ride in the big time. He lay awake that night going over every wrong move he had made. He did better the next day in the second go-round, but he was still too tense, trying too hard, and he knew it. Then in the finals, he drew a horse so mean and full of fight he had no time to think about anything or do anything but ride. For the first time at Odessa, he rode the way he knew he could. When the scores were announced, he placed second in the final round, won enough place money to pay his hotel bill. The money mattered little. He'd begun to find himself. That did matter. The Odessa show closed, and he went on to the next show, and the next, and the next. The list began to thin out as the newcomers dropped out, but Tom Black was still there doing better in each show. Then in Fort Worth, he made two spectacular rides into the glow of satisfaction, the triumph of mastery. This was the turning point. In the next 2 months, he rode 8 shows and finished with the money in 6 of them. The crowds began to know him by name, to watch for him. He was talked of as the best first-year man on the circuit. Then before he realized it, he began to lose. He finished out of the money in 3 shows in a row before he remembered Red Dillon's bitter words. You start riding for the crowd and you forget what you're there for. He was no longer riding to Red's orders, but he was riding for the crowds, trying to be a hero. He stopped listening for the cheers and became a rider, a man fighting it out with a horse, and he began to win again. The week settled into a pattern. There was the long drive to a strange city, the strange hotel room, strange arena. There were the events that meant nothing to him, the bull riding, calf roping, steer wrestling, trick riding, sometimes the inconsequentials of a horse show. There was the waiting, the long, dull hours of waiting. Then the one thing that mattered, the horse riding, the battle between man and horse. 3 rides, 3 brief moments where it came fully to life. Then the pattern started all over again. The weeks became months. Summer passed, the circuit reached Albuquerque, and for some reason, he didn't know why, everything went right for him. He drew the worst horses he had drawn all season, but his timing was perfect. He made 3 all-out rides, and he won every go-round, placed top in the averages, and took the big purse. That night the show ended, he decided to skip the next show, drive home and see Mayo, take a few days off. The break he decided would do him good. The next morning he bought a new car, and he bought 2 cartons of groceries and headed for home. He reached the cabin mid-afternoon, and Mayo was in the garden, pulling bean vines. When Tom went to greet him, the old man peered at him and said, "Who are you? You bring news about Tom?" "I am Tom, Mayo," Tom said. The old man shook his head. "Tom," he said, "is a boy like this." He held his hand at shoulder height. Then he bent to pull another bean vine. Tom put his hand on his shoulder. "Boys grow up. Come help me get these groceries, Mayo." Mayo went with him to the car, and they carried the cartons into the cabin. Tom set the jars and boxes on the table, and Mayo examined the labels in each one just as though he could read, before he could put them carefully on the shelves beside the fireplace. When they had finished, he said, "Get the cups," and he poured coffee, and they sat down and looked at each other. Finally, Mayo said, "You have been gone a long time, too long. Tomorrow we finish harvesting the frijoles." Tom tried to tell him about the big circuit, where he had been and what he had done, especially about Albuquerque, which he was sure Mayo would understand. But Mayo only waited to pause long enough to say, "And next week we harvest the chilies." Before he went to bed, Tom went out and hid all his money but $10 in his car. Some point during the night he awakened and saw Mayo going through his pockets of his pants, but the $10 was still there the next morning. Tom helped with the beans for 3 days, and they got them all harvested and threshed. The third evening, Tom said he was leaving the next morning, and Mayo seemed to pay no attention. But at breakfast the next morning he said, "You come, you go, just like him." He smiled wryly, and Tom finished eating, put on his coat and hat, and said, "I'll be back late in November, Mayo." And the old man said, "Vaya con Dios," and added, "Ya el diablo." It was his farewell. Go with God and the devil. And Tom didn't know or much care whether it was a blessing or a curse. He caught up with the circuit, rode it through week by week to the last week of November, then called it a season and went home. He felt entitled to a month's rest. Mayo made no pretense of not knowing him. He gloated over the groceries as before, then set out the coffee. "Now you come back to stay?" he asked. "For a month or so. Then I go back and write some more." "You win this time?" "Sometimes I won, sometimes I didn't. It was a pretty good season." There was no reason to tell Mayo he had been named best first-year man on the circuit. Mayo peered at him, speculating. "You bring a bottle?" Tom knew what Mayo was thinking. He had stopped out in the flask before he came down to the cabin and hid most of his money in the car. "No bottle," he said. Then he reached in his pocket and drew out $200 in tens. He spread them on the table, divided them into 2 equal piles, and pushed one pile over to Mayo. Mayo counted it, then asked, "This is what you win?" "This is your share, and," he added, "you don't have to roll me for it." Mayo folded the money carefully and put it in his pocket. He shrugged, smiling to himself. "We do not tell all that we know, huh? We are the old people, you and me." He chuckled, then got up and set out bowls and dished out beans and chili. "Eat," he ordered. "The frioles are good, big and strong. They make a big rumble, bigger than you make." Tom stayed a month and was on his way again, back to Odessa on the big circuit. He was a second-year man now. He took up where he left off, won the number 2 purse at the first show, then took top money the next one. Nobody could win them all, but if his luck held, he would break the tradition that a good first year is always followed by a poor second season. For 3 months, he was in the money at every show, and rodeo people began to say that Tom Black was on his way to the championship, something practically unheard of for a second-year man. Then in May, he began to override the horses, pressing too hard. He finished out of the money in one show, took 5th place in the next, and was thrown for the first time that season, and realized he had been playing to the crowd, trying to overpower every horse he straddled. He eased off and began to win again. Then it was June, a hot, sweaty June. The heat never bothered Tom, but it seemed to either to slow down the horses or make them extra mean, depending on the horse. His first go-round horse was the mean kind, but he rode it clean and hard. For the second go-round, he drew a horse he knew, one he had ridden 6 weeks before. It was a ducker and dodger that buckled in tight patterns close to the shoes. As he saddled up, he decided to power it from the start and try to work it away from the chutes, and then give it its head and let it go, give it the worst it had. He rosined his shafts, dried his hands, and eased in the saddle and measured his rein. Then the announcement blared, "Coming out of number 2 chute on Nightmare, Tom Black." The gates swung open. The crowd roared. The horse lunged into the pattern Tom remembered. 3 quick jumps, then a duck and a dodge, and he powered its head around to the left to prevent its spin to the right and back towards the chute. It made another lunge, tried the duck, and he powered it again. It seemed to go crazy. It reared and danced and squealed wildly, then lunged right towards the chute and lunged again. Number 1 chute was empty. Its gate swung back, a helper holding it. As the horse lunged towards the chutes, the helper scattered. The horse plunged against the open gate, struck it with its shoulder. There was a crash of splintering planks as the broken gate swung loose. Tom tried to power the horse into the open, but it lunged wildly, reared, plowed into the broken gate, and struck the chute full force. Tom, fighting for the rein, was thrown heavily against the chute. The horse screamed and kicked madly. Men shouted. The crowd groaned. Tom, on the ground inside the empty chute, saw blood spurting. In the lunge that threw him, the horse had impaled itself on a splintered plank. A sliver broad as a man's hand had pierced the horse's chest like a huge bayonet, then broken off. Still screaming, the horse went down, hoofs flailing, frantic head pounding the ground. Pain stabbed through Tom's chest as he was gasping for breath, but he pulled himself to his feet and reached for the chute to steady himself. A new stab shot up his right arm. Then the official pushed through the milling riders and helpers and held a pistol to the doomed horse's head. The roar of the mercy shot was like a jagged prong through Tom's chest. The horse let all his breath in one last long gasp, then relaxed, dead. Someone was shouting in Tom's ear, "You hurt?" He turned and saw a young sandy-haired man with a black bag, the arena doctor. Tom said, "No, just shook up." The doctor watched his face, saw his quick gasp for breath. "Can you walk, or shall I call a stretcher?" "I'll walk." They went to the first aid room, and the doctor stripped back Tom's shirt and made a quick examination. He loaded a syringe and jabbed it in Tom's left arm. "This will ease the pain. Your right arm's broken and probably a few ribs." He turned to an older man. I want x-rays of his right arm and his chest. I'll be at the hospital by the time we get the pictures. Half an hour later, Tom was in a hospital bed and the doctor was splintering his arm. The radius is broken, he said, the big bone, but the ulna's all right. He reached for the tape. And you got 4 broken ribs. I'll have to tape you. That's all I can do for them. But you're going to lie here a few days until we see how your guts are. He gave him another shot. You're through writing for a while. I'll see you tomorrow. The next day they took more x-rays and they kept him quiet with sedatives for 3 days. The 4th morning he refused all medication, and when the doctor came in, Tom had his pants and his boots on and was trying to get into his shirt. What do you think you're doing? The doctor demanded. I'm getting out of here. All right, I came in to tell you you're all right inside, no internal injuries, but you can't go back to rodeoing until that arm knits. A couple months or so. Where are you going? Well, I'm going home. Well, where do you live? New Mexico. Well, how are you going to get there? Drive. Who's going with you? Nobody. You're going to drive to New Mexico with one arm. Why not? Tough as rawhide, aren't you? And stubborn as all hell. The doctor stripped the tape from Tom's chest. These ribs will be sore for a while and hurt to take deep breaths, but they're knitting. I'm telling you, though, stay off a horse for 2 months, understand? Have a doctor look at that arm when you get home. So Tom left the hospital. He got in his car and his gear and headed west. And that leaves us after chapter 3, moving on next to chapter 33 with our next reading of When the Legends Die.